Today, I want to give a big shout out to Mile 2 and thank you so much for being here with us today. We really appreciate it. We look forward to your thoughts that you're going to share today about your jobs and what it took for you to get to where you are today. So I am going to hand it over now to Mark Fogel, who is the Director of Learning and Development for Mile 2. Thank you so much, Mark, for leading this small panel discussion. And thank you to your two panelists for sharing their careers and thoughts with us today. So over to you, Mark.
All right, I've got it. Well, thank you, Cassie. And thanks for what you do at SOCHE and also everyone on the call for what you do for Ohio and our children going through our educational system. Well, we're happy to be here. As Cassie said, my name is Mark. I am not a software engineer. We're going to talk about software engineering today. And thankfully, we've got two of the best. We've got Dakota Clausen and Craig Bowman, who are both with me here at Mile 2. We're a software development firm and consulting firm here headquartered in the Dayton area. And I thought we'd just kick it off with basically, yeah, who are you? But also, how did you find yourself here in the world of software development? I thought, Dakota, I'd go to you first.
Okay. Yeah, so I went to St. Clair Community College. I originally actually was majoring in sign language. And then after a while doing that, I just realized it kind of wasn't for me and I wanted to switch it up. And I remember back in high school, I was in a computer applications class and we did like some HTML and stuff. And I just thought, maybe I'll try that again. And I took my first class in the software development program and I just like fell in love with it. So kind of started.
Excellent.
So I started my sort of software engineering career sort of a little differently as well. I was a professional librarian doing very manual tasks with Excel. That's a lot of, I'm sure when you hear Excel, you're like, oh yeah, we know Excel. But underneath Excel is this whole scripting language that you can use to sort of automate tasks called Visual Basic, and which I won't go into detail, but that's sort of how I got my start, was trying to solve problems in Excel and then just continuing to progress my learning from there.
So I'm an outsider, like I mentioned. I use the term software engineering, software developer, software programmer interchangeably. I don't know, is that accurate? Is there nuance? Is there difference that's at least important for maybe this audience in terms of high school kids?
I see it user like I don't think there's a difference on it's interchangeable.
Okay, so for all
yeah,
we can cut through that. Okay. All right. So I sort of say like easy question but hard answer, right? So day to day, like what do you do on a normal average day? And obviously every firm is different, every job is different. As a software engineer, there's a lot of variance in that. But so Dakota, for you, maybe what's kind of a day to day for you?
Yeah, so usually like the beginning of the day, if I'm like working on a project, I'll have like a standout. So that'll be with the whole team working on a project. So it'll be with like a project lead, tech lead, and like any developers on that team, and just kind of going over tasks and like future plans for the project and go through that. And that's usually like a meeting in the morning, and then from there, really, it's just most of my days just going through those tasks, working on the project, working on bugs, new features, stuff like that. That's been my day.
Okay, so hey, I want to run something by. So early in the morning-ish, right? Generically, a meeting.
Yeah.
And then what? Most of the time is kind of you're doing your thing as an individual. Is it more collaboration day to day? Is there a lot of variance as days go on, or what?
I'd say like each day is a little different. So like, I mean, depending on too, like what I'm working on, like there could be more collaboration if I need to bring like another developer in to work out an issue. Yeah, it definitely varies. Like I'd say like 60% of the time, maybe it's like individual work on tasks, and then
Okay.
30%, 40% of the time is working with collaborators.
Okay. It's like 60 individual, kind of roughly speaking. Okay. How different is that from the world of Craig as another software engineer And I should say, you're also a little bit more experienced. You're at Miles a bit longer.
Yeah.
You're an associate, which is a newer software engineer. You're a software engineer.
Yeah.
So I don't know how much that changes that day-to-day dynamic, but how do you kind of approach that question?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So being in charge of a team of software engineers is frequently the role that I've had recently. So my role in that is making sure everyone on the team feels confident in what they're supposed to do for that day. So it's a lot of like internal visioning, like, is where we are writing code for the next week actually going to solve the problem that the customer has? And in some cases, you may go down that road for a week and find that you meet with the customer the next week and the problem has changed. And so you need to kind of rethink about how to solve that problem that you had previously been working on in a new way. So that's sort of my role is to help be that intermediary between the customer and software engineers.
So I want to pick at something really quick. You talked about solving problems. I feel like like every good company under the sun is trying to emphasize we solve our clients' problems, right? Like that's our business model. For you as a software engineer, when you think about kind of solving a problem, how does that manifest itself? Are you at a computer doing your thing in terms of programming software? Is it you're leading a team that is doing that? I'm curious what your experience is, and Dakota can do next, but what do you think what does solving a problem mean as a software engineer?
Yeah, so what it means to solve the problem, from my opinion, as a software engineer is can you build something in the amount of time that you have, that when you're done or mostly done, you can go to the customer and they use it just like they test drive the car, right? When you go to a car dealership, they'll test drive your software and give you some feedback. And if you're 80–90% there, it feels good.
Okay. So B+, A-.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you summed it up really well. I mean, like, the big picture, yeah, I'd say that's about right. I mean,
Okay.
like, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. I kind of almost want to come back to something a little bit interesting, at least to me, but I think valuable to the audience is you talked about you thought you wanted to do one thing in life, and then you took a zig where maybe others would zag, and you did the same thing. What was it about this field that not attracted you? That's not the question. What is it about the field that let you jump into it, having not been someone that had a lot of formal training in software?
That's a good question.
Well, what about you? I mean,
I think that anyone can get into software engineering if you're motivated enough, and in a large part, a self-motivated learner, right? So like no one's frequently going to be there to tell you what you need to learn, especially after you finish your formal education. You may need to continue learning on the job, and so that's where I think again you kind of have to help identify in your own self what you need to learn to solve that problem. I don't know if that answers your question.
I think so. I think it's interesting because I think, okay, I'm a junior in high school.
Yeah.
And I hear Dakota talking about how great it is. I go, that's what I want to do when I grow up. So what, I have to go and get a degree, a bachelor's of science in software, computer science. Do I have to do that to be a software engineer? Is that a great path? It seems to me like there's lots of different ways to go about a journey into this field,
For sure.
which is complicated. But
Yeah.
what are some pros and cons of like formal education versus four-year degree granting institution, vice a community college, vice maybe even on the job training? I mean, what are some pros and cons there?
Yeah, I mean, like I mentioned, I did have formal training out to Sinclair for software.
Big fans of Sinclair here.
But yeah, I mean, college like gave me like it was a good foundation for coding. I think like I had that solid foundation there. But I think if you wanted to look another at like Bootcamp or something like that, it'd be more like specific training, I guess. Like this, with Sinclair, like I learned like Java and C++, like coding samples. And then it's like I came to Mile 2 and it's like, okay, now I'm going to do something different, like JavaScript and stuff. It's like, okay, I'm starting over, like doing that again.
Well, so you learned a hard skill in terms of the field, had to learn something new. Was that hard? Is it easy or?
It was challenging, but
Okay.
the foundation that I had from college definitely
Okay.
benefited me. Like if I just gone in with like nothing, like for example, the internship was another developer I worked with, but he didn't actually go to school for coding or anything like that. He was I forget, he just had no background.
Yeah.
He just wanted to like, you know, see that aspect of everything. So he definitely like struggled more with like the like, concepts and stuff than I did. Like I was definitely great for like formal education then, having that foundation. But I think if you did like a boot camp and like you knew that like what you're going to be working with, like you could be more focused on that and be more prepared. Does that make sense?
Okay. I do want to come back to the boot camp thing. I hear it all the time. I don't really know what it is. So I want to come back to that. Craig, what about you? Like pros and cons of say 4-year degree, 2-year degree, 0 formal training. How do I do this? How do I navigate this?
That's a great question. I would say that from my personal experience, not having an associate's or a formal software engineering, I think it would have been a lot easier for me to have an associate's in engineering, to at least know that to the employer, like, you know, that yes, this person meets the minimum standard for what we could eventually train up to be a even greater software engineer. But I think I also kind of don't have any regrets because I spent a lot of my educational career learning things that are to me analogous to software engineering. So I think that has helped me a lot to think creatively about how to solve problems.
Okay. So this boot camp thing I hear about, right? So I see it in my email from time to time, like learn how to code, right? Go to this boot camp. Sometimes I see it offered very low cost, if not free.
Yeah.
What is this model that's out there? If I'm 17 in high school, and I'm interested, should I pursue it now? Should I wait? What's the approach there?
I mean, I think you could, like, from my understanding, I've done boot camp. From my understanding of boot camps, you know, they can be done in less time than a 2-year degree, obviously, like 12 weeks or whatever.
Okay.
But from what I know, it's like a kind of at your own pace kind of course thing, and it's just, you know, just get it completion when you're done. Like, so.
Okay.
Yeah. And then adding to that, I would say that employers in software engineering, if they see on your resume that, you know, maybe you went to Sinclair, but you also took a, you know, the term massive open online course, MOOC, as it's sometimes called, you know, that is provided by like another university, may have one of those massive open online courses. And so, if, you know, a lot of times just having one of those courses from any university, I think, you know, if you're wanting to get into machine learning, right, and someone sees on your resume like, oh, you took the entry level like AI course at Stanford, like, which is very cheap or if not almost free, you know, from Stanford online, you know, that's a very low barrier to entry that, like I said, gets your foot in the door, and it's, you know, people are going to look at that resume.
So that's beautiful. I love that kind of almost the signaling to an employer, both here's what's on my resume, but also I'm going to try to demonstrate my skill. What are some other things either from like certification standpoint or skill standpoint that again, I'm high schooler, I want to consider now?
I mean, so the boot camps, like e-portfolios, maybe?
Oh, what? Sorry?
An e-portfolio?
E-portfolio? Okay, so like what? Here's Dakota's like corpus of work, my portfolio. Like this is what I've done, or
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, I know some people I'm working on it myself, but I mean, if I had one previously getting a job, would have also helped me kind of demonstrate my skills. I think that would have given me an advantage too.
Yeah. So I, you know, as I was applying to places like Mile 2 before I got a job here, you know, like Dakota was saying, you know, if you can link out to a small, even a really basic website that you built and show like, oh, you had to build something and put it out into the world, that's huge, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there a time that's too early to start? Like if I do something in 8th grade or freshman year and it's
as early as you can do it. I mean, if you can teach me, even if you just want to teach yourself, like you can totally do that. There's so many free resources out there to learn like any type of coding language you want to learn. Like,
Okay.
So.
Okay, I'm gonna take another zag here. And we were talking about it kind of beforehand, but like address the stereotyping head on that we get from movies. Like software engineers, they live in their cubicles, their heads down, they just do computer. I don't want to talk to Craig, I don't want to talk to Dakota. We know that that's wholly false.
Right.
There's all kinds of so-called soft skills that we really value both here at Mile 2 and other employers. What should I care about? I want to be as juicy a candidate in this field as possible. What kind of soft skills should I care about? Should I pursue? And how do I do that?
I mean, I'd say personability is like definitely a big one, because I mean, like I said, like I'm in stand-up meetings, I'm in collaboration meetings during the day. Like I need to be able to communicate and like problem solve and collaborate with other people on my team working on the same project I'm working on. So that's definitely a soft skill.
So you, even though you're fairly new, it's not just I'm heads down on a computer.
Right. No.
You're absolutely communication skills.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. What about you, Craig?
Yeah, and adding to that, like I said earlier, creativity is just huge. Like if you can solve problems in a more creative way than anyone else can, that's awesome. But I would say that, you know, you can't really solve a problem unless you understand it first, and listening goes, I think that's, you know, it's very cliche, but being a really good listener is still, I think, an underrated, underseen, you know, expertise.
Yeah, because I mean, I always just think about this notion that there's an appeal to the software engineering field potentially among some who don't want to collaborate. Like they're for whatever reasons, right? Personality differences that we all have. I'm looking for a field that is rewarding and pays my bills, and I can just get a job. I'll sit there all day. No one will talk to me. I'll do my thing, and I'm good to go. Does that even really exist anymore? For all intents and purposes, it feels to me like it's not true, but I don't know.
I wouldn't disagree. Like I don't, in my experience, it's not been that way. Like I've had to, you know, stick myself out there and collaborate. Like, it's not been.
Okay.
I think it doesn't exist except in some cases where, you know, the person has just sort of expressed like, you know, sometimes it does. Yeah.
Okay, so it's not impossible, but but the stereotype is false. Like
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think it's the rule anymore. No.
So we would all in life be better off like being good at math. But let's say I'm a C or worse math student, right? Like I don't love it. I'm like frankly just not all that motivated or great at it. Is this door closed? Is this just an impossible dream of working at a company where I'm developing software if I'm mediocre?
And that was honestly like one of my fears too. Like when I first came into programming, because I always struggled with math. But no, like I mean, so at this part of my career, like, no, that's never been an issue. Really. So
okay.
I wouldn't say the door's closed. So, Craig, do you agree?
Yeah, no, I think willingness to learn more complicated math is more important. But yeah, I don't think you have to be great at math. And I think if you're passionate about whatever the problem is, like you'll learn as much as you need to solve that problem. And so, you know, I wouldn't say don't worry about learning math, but you know, it will come up.
Right, yeah, for sure.
It will come up.
But I don't think it doesn't close the door.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think okay. What else? I guess subject-wise or topically, if that's an appropriate. Like, what should I'm a guidance counselor, and I'm talking to some of my students who express interest in this field. What's some good guidance? We channel our inner guidance counselor, which is a really hard thing to do. It's a hard career.
I'll jump in. I think one of the best classes I took in my undergrad was philosophy of logic, which doesn't, I mean, it is a philosophy class, but it's very, you know, math based, I guess, in a way. But it's, you know, just being able to understand how to do logic on a complex level, even if it's not math, is super important. And understanding, you know, the Venn diagrams and whatnot, you know, will help you solve a lot of problems.
I like that. Sounds interesting innately, right? Like, yeah.
Yeah.
What about you, Dakota?
It's like advice. Is that it?
Yeah, if I don't have, say, like computer developing as a class I can take, what are some things that I would want to be interested or pursue if I can, that would help me in the field?
I mean, like I mentioned before, I mean, there are a ton of like online like free resources that even I was taking advantage of, and just diving into one of those, or even like Udemy is a really great example.
What is it called? Sorry.
Udemy.
Udemy. UDEMY. Is that right? Okay.
That's right. And I mean, they have like massive sales at the time, and you can pay like $10 and like learn JavaScript. Like,
And it's like 100 hours of
Yeah,
course time.
it's like a full blown,
massive.
yeah. That's
For
when I
20
started-
bucks.
Yeah, exactly. When I started at Miles Tools, like an intern like that was one of the things that I purchased, and that helped a lot. That's how I got through it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would definitely recommend taking advantage of the like online resources available. You don't have to wait to enroll in college and start a class. Like you can at any point in time.
That's a good one. I was thinking, okay, so let's say I want to go to college. I just for many reasons, that's the path I want to go down. Not sure my major, but I love the idea of software engineering, computer science. But gosh, those first year, 2 years, I'm taking these core classes I may not like. I can be doing that stuff on the side.
Absolutely.
That's helpful for my advancement,
Yes.
career, and so on.
For sure.
What about kind of staying on that track a little bit, wanting to go to college? Is there anything that you would advise a high school student to consider as they're exploring that idea? And they want to do software engineering. Yeah, like so we know that you don't have to go get a 4-year degree granting degree, or you don't have to go to college, but I want to. What advice would you give me on consider X, Y, or Z?
Yeah, I would say, and this to a lot of higher education teachers out there, this is a familiar conversation where like you're gonna have multiple careers in your life, right? And so, if you want to do something else for the first 10 years, like, maybe when you're 30, you're going back to Sinclair and getting an associate's in engineering. That's cool too, so don't underestimate, just having the expectation that you're going to have more than one career.
Always good advice.
I think so.
Yeah, truly, yeah. Maybe my last thing that kind of comes to mind, what expectations versus reality, what you thought it was going to be versus what it is, anything that sort of jumps out at you.
I guess I kind of did have that like stereotype like, assumption that like I am not an extrovert person, I would say. So I'm like, this is kind of perfect for me. But it still has been good because it's good challenges and it has like probably become more confident. But yeah, that was definitely like assumption that I had.
Yeah.
So.
Interesting. And pop at the forefront of your mind on that one?
No.
The idea was perfectly matched to
I think so. Yeah, that's good. That's it.
Yeah. Well, again, those were kind of the top of my mind that I had. My internal 25-minute clock is hardwired. Patty, do we want to open it up to questions to the audience, or I'll hand it back to you.
Well, perfect timing. It is. I was getting ready to say 25-minute warning right when you said last question. So great. Yes. We're open up for questions now. I know we had a couple in the chat, but if you want to unmute, you can just ask a question right now. Otherwise, I will read some of the questions in the chat. Well, one of the questions was, in high school, would you recommend a stats or pre-calculus pathway?
It's a good one.
Would be helpful, I'm sure.
Sound like an either or. Is there one?
Yeah,
That's,
I think either one would be super useful. I think.
Yeah.
okay. There you go. Choose your own adventure on that one.
And what is the most used programming language?
That is a very heated debate. Of the question.
You hit the nerve with whoever asked that question. You hit a nerve.
I mean, a lot of people would say JavaScript, but I think it's Python. So
maybe it's a time.
yeah. But yeah, I think it depends really just what types of problems you want to solve. You know, if you want to be the type of person who builds a website that you can present to people, then you know, JavaScript would definitely be a big one. But if you maybe want to do more machine learning and artificial intelligence, that's going to be Python, right? But there's always a hybrid, so you know.
Mhm. Would you recommend one over the other as far as employability skills wise?
JavaScript.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great to know. And then when you're looking to hire someone, what one skill would you really want them to have? Besides obviously computer programming, but what other skill are you looking for?
I was gonna say like just like willingness to learn,
Exactly.
like an open mind, because like it's so much like if you're learning every day. Like and that's what I love about the job. It's like there's new challenges every day. It's never the same like, boring thing over. Like you always learning something new. So definitely willingness to learn and an open mind.
Yeah, exactly.
Wait, I thought learning stops when you graduate high school.
Nope.
Any other questions? Oh, wait. Somebody was asking, where's a good place to get some experience?
That's a
I
good
know we
question. I
talked
mean,
about,
I'm
Go
sorry,
ahead.
like, yeah, it's sort of the classic conundrum, right? Like, how do you get experience to showcase that? You know, we'd love to score an internship if I'm a student, right? But how can you get that experience? You talked about the portfolio. What else is there out there?
Internships, local, pretty much any city like Dayton will have like a meetup.com in a group that meets once a week to talk about JavaScript or Python or whatever. So those are really good places. And a lot of those organizations will have some sort of volunteer project that they are collectively writing code for to solve a problem. You know, so look for local organizations that have some, you know, free, you know, groups that just meet once a month.
I was gonna say personal experience internships with there actually requires you to take an internship
Okay.
of your program. So and they have all sorts of connections, and they're the ones that got me this class with too. But yeah, internships. And I was wondering, like, contributing to like open source code too. Maybe it could be a really good experience.
And if that doesn't make sense, like open source code, if you want to explain that?
Sure.
Yeah, open source code is typically just something that somebody has written that like no one has to pay for, but anyone can use it, right? So what's an example?
But it's public domain.
Yeah, so pretty much every company out there uses open source software, right? So if you're pulling a library from JavaScript, like that, some utility that does something, it's gonna be open source. And so if you even contribute like I corrected these typos, and you can show that you corrected these typos, like you know how to contribute is a good one. Yeah.
That seems uniquely available to this field.
Yeah, it's very unique. Yeah.
all right. Well, thank you, Mark, Craig, and Dakota. This has been really informational. I know I personally learned a lot. We appreciate your time and your expertise. Thank you so much. And with that, I will let you go enjoy your afternoon.